Alright, a wonderful good day everybody and welcome back to my channel. Got Shadow here, and I'm going to bring you a deck or a version of the deck without cryptic command. It has been requested a couple of times and I'm of course here to oblige. So what does change? Without the cryptic commands we're lacking a little bit of the top end value, so we need to be a little bit more proactive, which means I added 2 Ragavans. I don't want to play more than 2, but 2 is fine. We went back to playing 2 Creeping Torpids, not a split between Creeping Torpid and Hall of Storm Giants, and not 2 Hall of Storm Giants, but 2 Creeping Torpids to chip in a little bit of damage here and there. Also, if we're being hit by like a Teferi or whatever, it's good that we can accompany a Ragavan or whatever that's on the battlefield with a Creeping Torpid to get rid of it. Then there's Spell Pierce instead of a Fatal Push, as I want to protect the Ragavan and also especially prohibit or decrease the ability of my opponent to play early Remnant 6s, etc. Also, of course, Spell Pierce is very good against Living Ed decks and combo decks in general, so that's good. And then Grixis in there for the late game. So we're somewhere between, right now with this build, we're between the Coffers Control version that I've been playing before, and on the other hand between Murktide and Grixis Shadow. So we're between Midrange, Control, and Tempo, I would say. We can take all of these 3 roles other than the decks that I just mentioned, but we still maintain the capabilities that we had before. I think it should be fine because the main change is basically going a little bit lower with the Ragavan, but on the other hand, of course, Ragavan should also allow us to cast a couple of spells of our opponent in between. We shall have to see if that works out. I haven't tested it yet, but that's as far as theory goes. And then in the sideboard I just changed one thing, and that is I took the Nimble out because again that's more of a controlling card, or hardcore controlling card, and I put in another Turak Dread Cantor because I need to have replacements for the Ragavan in certain matchups. That's it for the deck tag. Let's jump into League. Alright, welcome to round number 1. We're playing against Magic Beefus, and I think we're gonna mulligan here. We have a pretty slow hand that doesn't, like, isn't functional for the first couple of turns. Alright, and this is a little better. Let's keep this. And we can either ditch the Archmage Charm or the Croxa here. Croxa could be coming down on turn 4 here on curve, so that would be good. On the other hand though, in the dark without knowing what our opponent's actually doing, I'm inclined to ditch the Croxa. See what's going to happen, because otherwise we're pretty much committed to running in that direction. Alright, so our opponent might be a Ragavan / Murktide deck, which appears to be the case. Yep. Have to be a little bit careful. Sometimes these decks run main board. He ditched an expressive iteration. That can only mean that there is a Murktide somewhere. So we have to be careful. Not the best draw for us. I think I'm gonna just get rid of it, and then we shall have to see whether or not we can deal with a Murktide when it comes down. Of course, right now it's not gonna be super big. And that's a decent draw. I think I'm going to counter here. Our opponent seems to be lacking threats right now. So, okay. It does have a lightning bolt to follow it up with. Interesting. All right. Yeah, I believe I'm just gonna go ahead here and go with the Seasoned Pyromancer. I think that's the most beneficial line here right now. I don't know if he would have played... Yeah, if he had the Lightning Bolt there, he would have probably just bolted me if he had a Murktide. So, I think I'm gonna ditch both of these K commands. Like, they're not really great right now. Yeah, and we're gonna wait for one turn here with the Bloodcheese first. I might have to fetch Shock. We shall see. Yeah, good thing is Ragavan is basically a dead card now. Oh, it does have a Murktide. Alright, so we definitely have to fetch Shock. Our opponent might have the ability... Oh, he ditched the Spell Pierce. Hopefully that means that he doesn't have another one. I think I want to preserve a little bit of life here. Therefore, I'm going to go with this. And then... that's also interesting. Let's try to kill it first. Could, of course, also just bounce, but... see if he does have another Spell Pierce. No, he doesn't, so... we played it correctly. It's of course possible that he does have another Murktide in hand. But at that point, there's only one in there. Do I want to maintain it, or do I want to start looking for... I think I'm going to play this. And then we're going to start looking for a Snapcaster Mage or another Terminate. Ledger Shredder is just dealing 2 a turn, so... while we cannot really race it... there's a Snap. And there's a Counterspell. So I think we're gonna go ahead here. Do this. We also have Creeping Tar Pit up, which is good. I could, of course, try to steal the Ragavan with our Mage Charm. But then I wouldn't have a Counterspell up again anymore for a potential Murktide. So if he's willing to, let's see what he's going to discard here. I could, of course, terminate in response, because the Ragavan currently isn't a really big deal. He's incentivized to discard a card that actually does something. I think I'm going to go ahead here, play the Snapcaster out. See what my opponent does. If he counters here, then at least he cannot discard anything. Let's see. Needs to have another counterspell. Alright. So that one resolved. Ragavan is also in the bin. Which means best draw for our opponent, or the only draw that actually gets him out of this, is a Murktide. Otherwise, I think we're in a good position. Alright, did find a Murktide? No. He's looking for a Murktide. Did find one. Potentially? No. Alright, cool. That's also not the worst draw, because that allows me to actually attack with the Tar Pit while maintaining, but I don't actually know if I want to do that. Could be enough to just, could also try to steal the Ragavan here. TBH. Because I know that the only card that he could have here is actually... Yeah, I've seen 2 Spell Pierces being discarded, so he has to have a counterspell. Otherwise we have the Ragavan. I can attack for 6, and then after that he has to protect his own life total. He won't be able to attack anymore. Not with the Ragavan and not with the Murktide. So I think this is the best spot for us. Of course, it's very likely that our opponent does have some sort of removal. Alright. But we're still at 8, which is, you know, a healthy life total overall, I would say. I think I'm going to leave 1 elemental token back, because basically he took the damage here to make our attackers lethal next turn anyway, even if he like has 1 removal spell here. But what I don't want to happen is him being able to go remove elemental token Ragavan into something from our top deck. That's really good. Yeah. Did have the lightning bolt, but here is a Ragavan as well. And that should do it. Don't think, like, even if he does have an Archmage Charm here, I don't think that changes anything. Alright, got there. So now for sideboarding, so probably want to have the Flusterstorm. So now that we've shown him the Ragavan, actually, things become a little more dicey. I think I want to get rid of the Archmage Charms and probably the 1k command. The other stuff's still good. Put that in, and like 1 licensors. Yeah, I think that's good enough. Yeah, I think it's a keep, but on the other hand, like if our opponent does have Ragavan into removal, then it's gonna be a little bit difficult for us. Alright, there's a snow-covered mountain, but I probably don't want to start with that, because then I won't be able to have the Drown lock up next turn. I could of course also just wait this turn, but that will mean if my opponent goes with a Ledger Shredder, I'll have to deal with that next turn. And it's very likely that he does that, right? But I also don't want to deploy my Ragavan into open mana here. So I think we're just gonna wait here and see if we can get in a hit. Shadow of Doubt at this point in time would be bad for us. But I haven't seen anyone playing it in Murktide lists, so let's see. So we have a lot of power in our hand. We just need to figure out how to deploy it without getting wrecked. And our opponent's up to something here. Way too long pauses between his actions. Maybe he wants to deploy like a Snapcaster Mage or whatever. Like these Murktide lists are running a Snapcaster as a one-off right now. So actually, Bloodchief's Thirst is a card that I like to see here. Do I want to go with a Ragavan right now? Or do I want to maintain the Drowning Loch? That will enable, like if I go with a Drowning Loch this turn, that will enable me to go with Ragavan Dash next turn, potentially. Yeah, let's keep it one more turn. And then get a hit in when we can. Alright, so our opponent's missing a land drop here. That's good for us. Okay, so I'm gonna take the extra turn that we basically receive from our opponent not being able to draw to find a land drop here. To go with a Creeping Tar Pit. I think that's very relevant here. And then we can go, well, that's also not bad. Our opponent's not doing anything up until this point in time. Next turn I definitely want to deploy the Croxa, so... But Ragavan here at this spot also seems wasted, so I'm just gonna wait one more turn. Alright, so he's not fetching for Blood Moon mana, so I'm not too worried about that. And he's also gonna be running into more problems here. Unholy Heat, yeah, so he does have removal in hand. Apparently a lot. Let's go with the Croxa here. Because that will give our opponent incentive to do something, to be more proactive. This guy encounters spell here, wow. Our opponent must have a stacked hand. Yeah, I'm gonna go and counter this. We have multiple ways of dealing with a Murktide should it come down. And now I think we're gonna go ahead and dash a Ragavan. Because if they kill it, then post board we will have the ability to unearth the Croxa. Oh, we wait one more turn so that we also have counterspell backup, because we know that our opponent does have a lot of counter magic in his hand. But he utilized the lightning bolt there, so I assume that there's no more unholy heat in there, or he wants to save it for Croxa potentially. But again, he's not playing anything anymore. So I could, of course, play the Brazen Bora here. That would be something that he has to deal with as well. Flusterstorm is a good card. Do I wait for one more mana here? Or do I just go for it? I think I'm just gonna go for it here. Because our opponent... So I can go with a Flusterstorm that will force my opponent to have another counterspell, because he won't be able to deal with the Flusterstorm itself. Because if he does have a Flusterstorm of his own... Alright, does have another counterspell. I see. Okay. But still, that's an alright trade, I think. Expressive Iteration, good card here. Spire Bluff, nothing. Alright. So we already got rid of 3 out of the 4 counter spells, so I'm inclined to just potentially find... Yeah, so this one we're ditching. And then we're pretty close, actually, to being able to do stuff again. So I think I'm gonna go Snapcaster Consider here. If he wants to try to counter, then I do have the Drown Loch. Oh, it's a dress down. Interesting. But this way, I basically have enough stuff in the graveyard to get the Croxa back next turn. My opponent is not in position. Well, I can actually keep that in hand, right? Yeah, I want to keep that, I think. Alright, Ledger Shredder. Well, we have the Blood Cheese Thirst here, so that's fine. And that's also going to be the 5th card in our graveyard. So, and he discarded the Spell Pierce. Must have a pretty good hand. Do we think that our opponent does have the 4th counterspell in hand? And if so, then he only has 1 card left. Let's assume the worst, and it's gonna be a Jace, because that's the card that we can deal with worst, or least best, I should say. Then we might have an issue, right? But he could have also played it there and still have like a Spell Pierce up. But maybe he wanted to prevent the Croxa from coming down. I currently don't have protection for my Croxa, which is a little bit fucky. On the other hand, though, like... could, of course, sandbag an Unholy Heat to deal with it. But then he would have no cards in hand anymore. I think it's worth it to try it here. The only card that I'm scared of is a Jace out of my opponent there. Even if he does have Well, that's okay. Dress down is basic, but he still has to get rid of it, so that's fine. So that's definitely no Jace. So he's looking for another Unholy Heat, and now we should have him. We're gonna keep the Otawara in hand. I think we're gonna counter this. Yeah, Murktide does not matter at all. Arrivederci. And now, yeah, it's definitely dead. 100% we win this. Thing is, our opponent, like, even if he deploys the Murktide here, he has to maintain his other card in hand unless it's an Unholy Heat. So, yeah, he's gonna die a couple of ways. Alright, GG's. Alright, welcome to round number 2. We have a decent hand. I think that our opponent is on a combo deck with Ren and 6 and Teferi, but I'm 100% on that. Ren and 6, like, I think Modern is actually in a very good place, but you need to get rid of Ren and 6 to allow for creature decks to come back into the meta. Ren 6 just does too much, but I think I'm always saying the same, so everybody knows it by now. I'm gonna fetch Shock here. Sadly, we don't have a Spell Pierce in hand, which would be great here. I think I want to keep this. Or maybe our hand's actually not bad, so I'm gonna put it into the graveyard actually, so that we can utilize the tokens down the road. There's a Spell Pierce, so at least we can rid ourselves of additional copies of it. Also, like, Ren 6 always comes down turn 2, it's insane. Yeah, this is gonna be Teferi. That's gonna be another one. Alright. Fuck off. Okay, so Archmage Charm is not the worst. This will allow us, hopefully, to Savior the moment. Oh yeah, so it is some sort of turns combo deck here. So the thing is that this probably means that he doesn't have another land drop, because this only makes sense if you're looking for additional draws, and that also only makes sense if, yeah, I think he can't, no. Alright. That was just a leg. Yeah, it doesn't have another land drop, which is very good for us. Let's cast the Croxa here. I actually think this might be something that we want to counter. Hard evidence itself, of course, not great, but it will be an additional draw, and I probably want to have red here. And our Snapcaster Mage won't be able to attack into it anymore, and our opponent seems to be stuck to a certain degree. I also can bounce the Snapcaster, which is actually pretty nice, I think. Do I want to bounce it, or do I want to utilize the Season Pyromancer? I probably want to utilize the Season Pyromancer too. Then we have a 3-turn clock. That's pretty decent. And that's a Teferi. I think I'm going to counter, because then next turn, if he like tries to find... Alright, yeah, that's also decent. Or is it? So let's attack first. Problem here is if my opponent finds a fetch land off the top and does have creativity in hand, then we're probably running into the flying shit face monster. So is it good enough? But on the other hand, of course, it's going to be like a 1-turn clock after that. So he doesn't have a whole lot of time to do it, to find it. But I think we're going to go with this. Whoops. He doesn't know that we don't have another counterspell in hand. Let's see. Alright, didn't have a fetch land, so everything's correct. We're dealing 8. Yeah, exactly. Like, this guy basically chaining turns and dealing 5 each time. Pretty cool card, TBH. It's a pretty cool card. So this might be a Teferi, which it is. Okay. But there's no way. Yeah. But we have a Torpid, we have the Season Pyromancer tokens. There's no way that he's gonna get out of this. Alright, so let's see. Ragavan is actually pretty decent here. Probably wanna have these two. Probably also wanna have these two. And potentially even Unmoored Ego. The problem is that now I already forgot about, like, what's the thing called? Cast Croxa, put trigger ability in Croxa, discard save at the moment. There. Velomachos Lorehold. Alright, good. So I think Croxa, generally speaking, is a little bit too clunky here. Brazen Bora can come down at the end of turn, which is good. I probably need the Bloodcheese first for Ren 6. Also, Bloodcheese first gets around. I know he's also playing Emrakul, so Bloodcheese first actually gets around Emrakul. So if we go after Velomachos and then he goes with Emrakul next turn, we still have an option to getting rid of it. So 64. 64 is a little bit too much. Emo. Probably K command. And then we're going with 61 on the draw. That's fine. So cards we're looking for is none of these, basically. I think I'm gonna ditch this. This isn't good enough. This is slightly better. Probably want to ditch the snow-covered swamp here. Although Sunken Ruins will force me to go turn 2. Oh, the island. Because that allows me to go after the Ren 6 should it come down, and also maintain the ability to keep Flusterstorm up. What the fuck is this? Alright, so our opponent doesn't have a whole lot here. Interesting keep. Also, there's no fetch land, so even if he draws a Ren and 6 off the top, it doesn't really do anything for him. Also doesn't have any protection, so you may cast up to 2 instant into sorcery spells with mana from a graveyard and or hand without paying with a mana cost. This is an instant, so I probably want to get rid of this, right? It's 5 at instant speed. Yeah. So now I actually don't necessarily need the Steam Bands to shock them here. So we're just gonna go with that. Alright, Dwarven Mine here means he either drew another Dwarven Mine or he doesn't have another land. This is a little bit dangerous. So he's got, like, since then he had 2 draws, right? There are 2 unknown cards in his hand, which could be like a Veil of Summer and something else. If that were to be the case, then we could get caught here. Let's see. Interesting. So Blacksmith skill probably to protect the Dwarven token, the Dwarf token or whatever. So, but I'm gonna go after the creativity here, right? I could also go after the Lightning Bolt, I guess. But it appears to me that creativity is the correct draw here, on the correct take. Yeah, alright, so there was the Dwarven token. Yeah, he's gonna go with it, which is fine. We don't necessarily need to fight our opponent on the stack. Alright, so I think what we're gonna do is if I go, this is the first, then he taps 1, that's a second, so Storm is gonna be 3 for the Flusterstorm, which is 1 too few to actually do something here. Basically makes it a 3/3. Oh yeah, the Time Warp's still in sand, of course. Opponent has to do something first, otherwise we can't go after his token here. So we're just going to deploy Snapcaster, put a little bit of pressure onto the battlefield. Alright, so this is good draw. Now I could try to Bloodcheese first the Dwarven token. I think that's what I want to do here. He's protecting it, but that's fine. Oh, it's alright. It only gets +2/+2 if it's an artifact, apparently. Yeah. Alright, so this is really just hexproof for a fucking token, so yeah, I'm totally fine with that. Totally fine with that. If he wants to go after my Snapcaster Mage here, I'm also probably gonna let it resolve. Don't mind it too much. What was that? Okay. Something went wrong. Alright folks, so I had an internet outage here. Yeah, we're almost dead here on time. Hopefully it's not gonna not respond here. It's still loading. Come on, Magic. Okay. Alright, we're back. Whew. But now we only have 10 minutes left for this game, so we basically have to win this one. Alright, so I think I'm just going to deploy the Brazen Bar right here. We still have a couple of things that we can do, and our opponent's hand should be pretty clunky overall. We have enough protection up to stop whatever he's doing, I think. And fighting over this dwarf token just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Okay, so by now we have so much protection, I could actually also deploy the Snapcaster Mage at some point. To get a little bit of an extra clock in there. Or we could alternatively try to end of turn go after the dwarf. So if I deploy the Snapcaster Mage here, then a Lightning Bolt is potentially lethal. Our opponent does have 8 cards in hand. Let's see what he's going to discard first. Teferi, interesting. He doesn't have white and blue here. Okay, so this is the crucial turn. And our opponent found another land here. So now we'll have to see what's going to go. What's going to happen. Right, so he's going all in apparently. Let's go and counter this. And then we're also gonna counter this. And then our opponent should concede. All right, GG. All right, welcome to round number 3. We're on the draw once more. Let's see what's gonna happen and what our opponent's actually gonna bring to the table here. I think we can keep this. Obviously, we don't have a turn 1 removal, which is a little bit off. Oh, we're playing against spirits. All right, so let's see. I think I need to bench the Xanthus Launch for now and go with a Consider. Definitely need to find removal spells here. Looking at our sideboard, Chorak should be decent, and then of course there's Necroplasm, and Grim Lavamancer. But generally speaking, we don't really have a whole lot against tribal decks in the sideboard, which is a little bit of a problem. All right, so this speaks for Rattle Chains. I don't even know if, like in English, yeah, I do want to have that. That's good. That's definitely Rattle Chains, right? Yeah. Okay, so what do we want to get rid of here? I could, of course, go after... So the Rattle Chains gives Flash to all the spirits, which is probably more of an issue. So let's have this resolve, and then the triggers are going on the stack, and then I think I'm going to go after the Rattle Chains. I believe that's more relevant than the Wanderer right now. And with that on the stack, he cannot counter it effectively. So, yeah. This is pretty weak. So this means our opponent really doesn't have a whole lot of good stuff going on in his hand. I think we have enough lands here. I'm gonna ditch this. Okay. And that will allow me to go probably Snapcaster Mage to kill the Mausoleum Wanderer with the Lightning Bolt. Our opponent does have a Cavern, so of course the counterspell is really bad here. But then even if he does have another Skyclave Apparition, that should be okay. Because we can kill this one and then get something else out. Okay, yeah, it doesn't matter. Okay, pass turn. Obviously our opponent's also playing green, so it's potentially a deck that is running Collected Company. Yeah, I thought so. This was rather obvious, but that means that our K command is going to get a sweet 2-for-1. Our opponent should not be able to interact here. Would, yeah, okay. Discard a forest. Okay. So we have one more relevant removal spell. This one I'm probably gonna just let resolve. Okay, so let's see what else he does have in hand. It could be a spell queller. If that were to be the case, then we force the issue here. Okay, there's something that he wants to protect, which I'm fine with. Let's see what's coming out of it. Okay, just a land. Could of course attack here, but I think we'll block. Okay. But this means that I'm not gonna block, but instead I'm gonna go and try to kill this. Could be another rattle chains, of course. But other than rattle chains, I think we should be dealing with everything in here. Yeah. Okay, and that means that now the coast is clear for our Grixis to come down, and we still have a decent amount of interaction in hand, which I like. Yeah. Alright, yeah. That was another Skyclave apparition. Makes sense. Okay, good. So now we're in a decent spot. Except for a collect company, I think our opponent can't come back from this. Yeah, just a drugstore captain, which is absolutely fine. And we can deal with a collected company now as well. So we're in a good spot here. But then post-board, we really have to think about how we combat this. Because this deck currently is not prepared to handle tribal decks. I mean, it can handle it, of course, but it's just not tuned to do so. Okay. So I do want to have Grimlava Mansa, I want to have Turok, and I want to have Necroplasm. These are the cards that I do want to have. Necroplasm is pretty slow, but we might find a window to apply it here. And cards that I definitely do not want to have. So Spell Pierce is really bad here. Counterspell is mediocre at best. I think I want to maintain the Ragavan because early in the game it's still a must block by my opponent, and for the most part we should be able to get a 1-for-1 trade for that, and then it's as good as a removal spell basically. Grixis is not great here, especially with the Turok. We already do have a late game threat that our opponent basically cannot beat once it hits the battlefield. I want to maintain the Kolaghan's commands for Ether Vial. Brazen Bora is good here. Archmage's Charm is probably a little bit too much. Can probably cut this down. Bring in like Thoughtseize, maybe 2. but we really have to be careful with our life tools. And of course our Mage Charm can still be like a draw tool. I think I'm going to bring in one Dottie or one Unlicensed. Unlicensed though doesn't block anything in my opponent's deck, so Dottie's probably better. Because the Spirits decks, most of the time they're running Moorland Haunt or whatever, like this land that you basically exile cards from creatures from the graveyard and you generate spirits. Yeah, I think it's called Moorland Haunt. Alright, so now we have a decision to make here. I think... What's a Phantom Spirit or something, right? The Lord that the Spirit players have on as a 2-drop. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go and start off with a Ragavan here. And then if he does have the Phantom, I'm not sure if it's a 1/4 or a 1/3. I hope it's a 1/3. If it's a 1/4, then we won't be able to attack into it. It's a 1/3. Okay, good. I mean, semi-good, I guess. So he's gonna sacrifice the Mausoleum Wanderer, right? But I think I have to try this. Yeah. It's fine though. And there's a Snapcaster. Snapcaster isn't bad. Unless, of course, our opponent has another Supreme Phantom. Okay. But that lets me deal with the Supreme Phantom. And we have a blocker for this thing. And then next turn, we can't get the Necroplasm down because our 2 black other sources here are coming in tapped. So I probably want to maintain the Sands Launch just in case we flood out, so I get an additional draw. Alright. So very likely... Okay, yeah. But I assume this is not the only thing that he has. I assume that there's also like the 3 mana thing that exiles a spell. Okay. So let's cycle this. Okay. Alrighty. Then I would say we're gonna deploy this dude. Because that's basically a must answer by our opponent. Our opponent's not fast enough to kill us before it starts hitting his creatures, I think. And thus, we should be getting something here. If not, then I can probably just attack in here for a little bit. Oh, it's a Skyclave apparition. All right. It's actually also not too bad, right? So now I can go. I have to kill this, I think. What do I? Because as long as my opponent's able to just flash in everything and give it protection potentially, then my removal spells are basically dead. So I'm gonna go and kill this thing to get a 3/3. Oops. And then I'm gonna also just kill this thing. That will give us an advantage here on the battlefield. Oh my fucking lord. Oh my god, that was really bad. That was still on the stack. Oh my god. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, that was potentially game losing. Wow. I was so deep in my lines that I completely zoomed out of that one. Okay, so he basically sacrificed the Teferi here. I don't know why. But now I can cast the Ragavan here. Just go after his Teferi with the other two. Damn it! Okay, he's not doing anything. And I do have a removal spell, so what's the worst thing that can happen here? Probably a collected company, but it didn't appear like our opponent does have one. So we're just gonna be attacking. If he blocks the Ragavan and trades, that's fine. Alright, there's the Spell Queller. That was the name that I forgot about. And now he basically has to block the Skyclave Apparition. And then we have 6 damage on the battlefield. And we're also ahead in terms of life total, so I think it's pretty decent. Let's go consider first. Okay, so needs to find a 1-drop or a 3-drop here. Found a Bird and Forge Tender, which isn't good enough. Probably. I don't even know if my opponent has cards that can get rid of my Creeping Torpid here. Alright, yeah. So he didn't draw another 3-drop here. Has to block with the Burnt Forge Tender. And now, I don't think there is a spirit that can deal with this Tar Pit or any other card in his deck. Alright, GG's. Alright, welcome to round number 4. We're on the draw once more. It rhymes. This time against Black Dragon. So, okay. We're on the draw. I think I actually like this hand better on the draw than on the play. So we're gonna try it. Of course, we could get stuck here again once more. Alright, so we're playing against a Murktide list that apparently is also playing Dragon Rage Chandler. Question is, do we want to get rid of it here? Our opponent could, of course, follow up with a Ledger Shredder. But I think it's worth something getting rid of it early on here. Let's see. It does have another threat. It looks like it. Yep. There is the Ledger Shredder. I could, of course, play the Croxa here. But I think it's not yet time for it. TBH. Probably want to get rid of this one as well. I have to fetch pretty aggressively here due to the fact that we want to play Croxa at some point. Our opponent does have a lot of creatures in his hand. Snapcaster into Lightning Bolt is not a viable option to really get rid of the Ledger Shredder. Now it's a 2/4 anyway, but he discarded a Murktide, interesting. And he doesn't have a third land drop as well. So let's see. So I could keep this, then I have the mana for Croxa, and I already have enough stuff in the graveyard. The thing is, I also need to get rid of that Ledger Shredder. Our opponent could have another Murktide in hand, or he's just looking for lands, that's also a possibility. So if I trigger him here, next turn we will have the Otawara ready though. At 5 mana I could even go play Croxa, and on the stack I could activate the Otawara without having to escape it. To be having an efficient turn. So yeah, I think we're not ditching it, we're just gonna be playing the Croxa out here. It's not perfect because our opponent does get an additional draw here and potentially also can grow the Ledger Shredder. On the other hand though, that's 3 damage that we don't receive. But I strongly assume that our opponent does have a Murktide in hand. And if that's the case, then wow. Another Lightning Bolt. Our opponent has a stacked hand here. Let's see. That's definitely a Murktide. So we're taking 3 here. I have to deal 2 to myself. Our opponent definitely does have either a Spell Snare or a Spell Pierce at the ready here. I think I'm going to shock here, then I'm down to 7. I'm going to take at least 3 next turn. And then we're going to try to bounce the Ledger Shredder after that. And the Dash Ragavan, wow. So that puts me dead to a Lightning Bolt. What could I do here? I could bounce the Murktide, or try to bounce the Murktide with the Brazen Bara that he probably cannot counter. And then I could Snapcaster the Ragavan. Snap block the Ragavan. That leaves him with the Ledger Shredder. And then I have to like top deck something. Let's see. Yeah, alright. Did have a Spell Snare. Instead of a Spell Pierce. Alright, so a Fluster Storm, this is definitely coming in. Also, I want to have more Graveyard Hate than usual, due to the fact that our opponent is running the Dragon Rage Chandlers. Grixis can stay. Season Pyromancer is good. Ragavan can probably also stay for right now. So don't want to be overboarding. I want to cut one of these and probably cut 2 counter spells. Because the only cards that I really want to counter with counter spells are Murktide and maybe like a Ledger Shredder, but not even necessarily. So we're also on the play here. So on the draw, things can turn around. Let's see. It's not perfect, especially not against like Ragavan and Darcy, but I think I need it for Grixis Serra. Can also eat my own graveyard if my opponent doesn't give me enough stuff to eat. But generally speaking, he should be filling his graveyard pretty fast. And then we're going to try to ignore the Darcy for the most part. Until we draw a Lightning Bolt or a Bloodsheath Thirst, because I really don't want to waste a Terminate onto a Darcy. Which is also why, by the way, I think this build is stronger. Because you're just stretching our opponent's removal suite a little bit thinner. So the Darcy is gonna... Well, didn't even attack with it. Oh. That was a very good draw, not gonna lie. I was gonna say, like, the difference between him and me is that he basically has no means of getting rid of my unlicensors, whereas I do have the K commands. And here the K command was just really good, both in terms of value, but also in terms of tempo. Like, very good. Also, basically, oh, there's another unlicensed hearse. Do I want to get that down? Yeah, I already expected the Blood Moon, TBH. I was like, yeah. So this unlicensed hearse is just a backup copy. I'm gonna pump the other one for as long as possible, I think. So I think now it actually makes sense to also terminate his shit, because the Murktide is probably not coming down anytime soon, and this will allow me to utilize the Drown Loch to a certain degree. So we're gonna be somewhat aggressive here with the Drown Loch. Magus of the Moon. Doesn't matter. So this is already a 4/8/8. So I just need creatures now, basically. Perfect. So, do I kill the Magus of the Moon first? Or do I just ignore it? Let's see. What cards can we currently not play out of our deck? Basically only Counterspell, right? Everything else we actually can play. So, do I mind this? I don't think so. I do not think so. Snapcaster Mage is also a very good draw. Yeah, let's activate this one. And then attack for 8. So the great thing is that, like, I can eat 2 more, then we have a 3/3 and an 8/8, both of which are bigger than the Magus of the Moon, so I can attack with it even after my Snapcaster hits the Ledger Shredder. And I'm gonna ignore the Magus of the Moon as much much as possible, because okay. I actually want my opponent to board it out. He has to recognize that this was a misboard and that he has to get rid of it again. All right. Yeah, I think I like it. The lineup overall, even with 61 cards. There's only 4 cards in our deck that we cannot play into a Blood Moon once we fetched a black and a blue source. So yeah, I think we're gonna stick with this. Our opponent, you know, he's to play around a lot of stuff. On the draw, though, maybe I want to cut the Dories. I think our opponent is gonna... Yeah, let me put in one more counter spell here over Dottie. If that worked, I'm not sure. No, that didn't work. Okay. Let's hope that there's no turn 1 Ragavan. There's the turn 1 Ragavan. And there's the Dottie that I was talking about. So I could go for a turn 2 Dottie. That would require me to play the Tar Pit here. Alternatively, of course, I can try to find... Let's go with this. And then if we top deck another black source, we're just going to play the Dottie, because I'm pretty much sure that we're not going to be killing the Ragavan here. Wow. Grim Lava Man's actually a very good draw. Because that also completely shuts down the Dottie here. Yeah, that's not gonna work out. I already feel it. Like, I have to go after the Ragavan here. This is not great. Let's try it. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We have to try to kill the Ragavan there. Even has a Spell Pierce. And it's basically the only thing, like, if my opponent doesn't, like my Murktide opponent doesn't have a Ragavan plus protection up on turn 1. I have like 95% against this deck. But once, yeah. He's also just hitting like good cards off of our library here every time. Okay, so apparently our opponent's looking for a land here. It's possible that he doesn't find it. If he doesn't find a third land and we can hit that fucking Ragavan with a removal spell at some point. Okay, so... Snapcaster Maze is not an option because... I think what I want to do... Do I shock here? No, that also doesn't make sense. So I'd probably go with Cascade Bluffs. Do this, and then I consider. Ditch this. Have a Terminate. Can't kill the Ragavan. Not the most elegant way to get rid of it, and he still does have the Grim Lavamancer, but at least we got rid of that fucking Ragavan. And we still have a little bit of life left as well. Alright, so opponent's still looking for lands. Found one here off the top, I assume. Yeah. It's possible that he's gonna be going with a Murktide here. Probably makes sense, yeah. Then, of course, we can respond with our Snapcaster Mage, which then gets killed by the our own Grim Lavamancer. But that, of course, reduces the amount of cards that he has in his graveyard. Okay, so it doesn't want to do it, apparently. Now we have a Ragavan here as well. So let's see. I'm pretty sure that our opponent does have counter magic, right? One spell Pierce is in the bin, but we already know that he's also running spell snares. So Ragavan is only an option as long as that Grim Lavamancer is tapped. I think next turn is where I want to deploy that, right? Because I have to dash it. Yeah, let's just pass the turn here. We basically have to find a Seasoned Pyromancer, otherwise things are looking pretty grim. The opponent definitely does have Murktide and Protection up. Alright, but passes the turn, so maybe that gives us an opportunity to do stuff here. Let's try to play a Snapcaster Mage, even into the Grim Lavamancer. Like, very likely that he's gonna let it resolve to... Alright, then not. I think this is a mistake, though. Probably. Okay. There is the Seasoned Pyromancer. My goodness, my own Grim Lavamancer is completely locking me out of this game. Our opponent got really lucky there. Like hitting it. Let's think about it. So our opponent certainly does have other means of countering the Seasoned Pyromancer here. Question is if he wants to. Well, he probably does, because it really does give me an edge here. Okay, let's resolve. Interesting choice. So now I can ditch the Croxa, and I probably want to ditch the Ragavan because it's not gonna get through that Grim Lavamancer at any point in time. Alright, so now I do have the Bloodshea Thirst, which could also go after the Grim Lavamancer. Opponent certainly does have the means. I could also, of course, just play the Dottie here. To try to overload the Grim Lavamancer. So that's probably going to cost him two more. He could, of course, also do it the other way around. Like, he could go Murktide and then utilize the Grim Lavamancer, but that will inhibit his ability to protect it. And I probably need the Bloodshea Thirst for the Murktide. So I'm just going to play this one out. Grim Lava Mansa is really strong in these matchups. Like, if you get it on the battlefield, really a house. Sadly, it's not working for us this time. Alright, he's just going for face, which means he has 2 lightning bolts in hand. Alright, I see. So now he can exile 2 additional cards with the Grim Lava Mansa, and that will even grow the Murktide more. So for us, it's only hoping that our opponent doesn't have a counterspell in hand. We can deal with a spell Pierce and a spell Snare. We just cannot deal with a counterspell. Alright. Alright, welcome to the last round. We're finally on the play here for once. We're gonna keep, although we're missing a 3rd land, but we have a lot of interaction here in the early couple of turns. So let's see where that's gonna go. I think I'm going to let this resolve. So we're very likely playing against Coffers. Could also be like the rack or whatever, but it's very likely Coffers. Yep. All right, let's see. Yeah, all right, so it's Coffers, and we shall see whether or not we get there in time. I need to find a 3rd land here. I don't. Ragavan could be decent, especially because he can bridge the gap here. There's another Profane Tutor. Okay. So really needed a land right now, because otherwise... Ah, damn it. So I can kill this and dash in. Or, alternatively, I can also kill this and then prevent the Profane Tutor from coming down. Because that's probably... You probably need to prevent that from happening, right? The spell pierces are basically dead here in this matchup. So what happens if he just has a 4th, like another swamp here? Then each Cable Coffers taps for 4, right? So then he generates 6 mana. Yeah, 6. And with 6 mana you can already do quite a bit. So probably have to let this resolve, right? Because it cannot, like, run into 6 mana without protection. Interesting. That was... So our opponent does not have another land drop. And we got to utilize our Spell Pierce. That's quite insane, actually. So now I can actually get my Snapcaster Mage back. Don't want to dash the Ragavan here. Feel like I want to hit him just so we catch a potential land off the top. Yeah, it was a Coffers off the top, so very good hit. I felt it to a certain degree. And that's not a land. And this is actually fine because then I get to utilize my K command. Return and 2 damage. Okay, we got another land. I think I'm going to play the Ragavan here. And then I'm going to protect it with the Spell Pierce if my opponent does have a Fail Push, which he apparently doesn't have. Fucking insane that I get to use my Spell Pierce this year against Coffers. And now we actually have the Ragavan up, and now it's going to be the first time actually this league that it's going to be beneficial for us. Before it just basically died every time. Expedition map. I think I can play that. Not too bad. Alright, so now he actually has the mana to do stuff. I'm not gonna counter Unmarked Grave. Archon means probably there's a persist. And what do I want to go for? I feel like Cascade Bluffs could be correct here. I probably don't want to have another Tar Pit here. I want to have an untapped source. And with Cascade Bluffs, I have access to all the red that I want and ever could need. So let's do that. Attack with the Ragavan again. and then we shall see. As long as we can keep that Archaeon in check, I think we're good. Or Archon or whatever. So I'm gonna shock here. And then we're preparing for next turn being hopefully lethal. Another expedition map. So how much do I need here? So 2 for counterspell, 2 for snap counterspell, and then potentially snap spell pierce or K command. So I should have one output for an expedition map here. Another unmarked grave. Another Archon. Alright, so can we win this right now? Okay. So our opponent just conceded. Alrighty. So we definitely need Graveyard Hate. So I want to have Unlicensed Hearse. I want to have Doughty. And I think I want to have Unmoored Ego. Seems like... So Persist only hits non-legendary creatures, so we don't have to be careful in regards to Emrakul, unless our opponent's just hard casting it. I think Ragavan's still good. I think Blushy's first. Probably not. Terminate. If we get hit by it, yes. Otherwise, no. Our opponent's playing mainboard Doughties, so we still need to maintain some sort of... I think we're going to go with a Grim Lavamancer here. That's pretty good against Doughty in general. And I think the Brazen Boar is pretty bad. And then we're just gonna cut one Cruxa, maybe even 2. Yeah, I think I don't want to have that one in there. Although... No, I think that's fine. If we hit the Archon, I think we just have to deal with a typical mid-range deck. So that's going to be our main focus, and then from there we're going to see where it goes. Probably Doughty, right? Yeah. Alrighty. So I'm going to do this because it's basically every time a Triumph here for us, as long as the Orbog is on the battlefield. Problem is, of course, okay, we do have another one. But general issue is that it's being exiled. So I cannot snap it back. Alright, we got the expedition map there. And apparently our opponent doesn't have a third land again. Pretty greedy keeps, TBH. So, what I think I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna shock the Steam Vents, and then I'm gonna go Season Pyromancer, discard Lightning Bolt and land. Alright. But Lily is not great right now. I'm happy to draw another Creeping Tar Pit here as a land, because that will give us additional reach. Okay, so now he's got 5 mana. Curse of Death's Hold. Enchant play, enchant... No. Actually, I can just... Yeah. Let's go with the Snapcaster here. I gotta say, like, for our opponent having access to so much mana, the Spell Pierces have been really good in this matchup up until this point. So now we have a decent clock on the board. Our opponent is hard-pressed to be proactive. Counter this. Interesting that he kept the Damnation in. Actually beneficial here. Very good out for him. Okay, so next turn we have lethal in a variety of ways. I can go end of turn Snapcaster. Or I can just attack with the Tar Pit. Alright, GG's. That was a full one. I think for the most part it was actually showing a lot of strength. I think you can definitely do this, but except for the Cable Coffers list, the Ragavan was never a really good card for us. Very difficult for us to protect it from removal spells because we don't have the threat density. So generally speaking, we're avoiding putting creatures on the board as long as possible. And therefore, I don't know if the Ragavan is really correct in this deck, because we're not proactive enough to really utilize it. But in that matchup, like against control decks in general, I think, and combo decks, Ragavan is always going to be good, but against like mid-range and tempo decks, it's just going to be an easy target that's going to be eaten bold. And that means that you're lacking an additional answer, right? This could be Fatal Push, this could be Cryptic Command, whatever. So just some food for thought, but otherwise I think the deck was actually pretty well rounded. I liked it a lot. Hope you enjoyed it. See you guys around.